A large part of algebra deals with variables. So what do variables represent? So in this equation, we've got x plus 3 equals 5. So x in this situation is the variable. So what x is standing for is the unknown value. So we're wondering what number plus 3 equals 5. So in this case, we know 2 plus 3 equals 5. So x is going to equal 2. So whenever you see a variable or a letter inside of your expression or an equation, it's standing for an unknown quantity. So it's standing for a value. So for example, sometimes they tell you what the variables are. So here it's saying evaluate an expression if a is -3 and b equals 5. So when I look at this expression, when I see an a, I'm going to plug in a -3. And remember when things touch, it stands for multiplication. So I'm going to use parentheses and I'm going to put -3 in there. And then plus b, which is 5. So -3 times 3 is -9. -9 plus 5 is -4. Here I've got 3 different parts touching, but each of these different items are going to be multiplied together because they are touching. So I'm going to put each variable, each number that I plug in for a variable in parentheses. When you plug in this -3 for a, make sure you keep it as a -3. So when I evaluate this, I've got -3, I'm going to do it, -3 times 5 is -15, and -15 times 4 is going to be -60, plus -3 is -63. So notice in multiplication the order doesn't matter. I could have done 4 times -3 first, or -3 times 5 first, as long as all of these 3 get multiplied together in the end. Something important to know when you're plugging in a value is that parentheses matter. So is there a difference between -3 squared without parentheses and -3 squared with parentheses? Yes, there is. So in this case, what it's doing is it's saying the 3 is being squared. So 3 squared is 9, and then it's putting the negative back with it. So it's going to give you -9 if you type this into a calculator. Versus here it's saying -3 squared. So what that's saying is the whole -3 is being squared. So it's like -3 times -3. And we know a negative times negative is a positive. So this is actually going to give us a positive 9. So it does matter if you use parentheses when you have exponents involved. So keeping that in mind, if they say, given that x is -3, and then we have these two expressions, when I plug in the -3, make sure you use parentheses. So when I plug it in here, it's going to look like -3 squared. So that's going to be a positive 9. Here, that negative is going to stay on the outside, and then we're going to use parentheses for the x, and then plug in the -3 squared. So this negative stays, and then -3 squared is positive 9, but that negative now makes it a -9. So keep that in mind when you're plugging in negative values into expressions that are squared. So quick 2 examples that look like that. Here we've got 2, and then for x it's -3, so make sure you use parentheses. And then plus y is -2. If you want to do parentheses here, you can, but you don't have to. So -3 squared is 9, 2 times 9 is 18, plus -2 is 16. Here we've got that tricky extra negative again, so make sure you keep that negative, do parentheses, then plug in the -2. And then we have a minus, and then we have a -3, so it's minus -3. Remember earlier we talked about how if you have a minus and negative, it's going to become a positive. So we've got a +3 now. So on this side, we've got a negative, and then -2 squared is 4. So we have a -4 plus 3 is -1. So these are important ideas to keep in mind when you're evaluating expression and plugging in values for variables.